I think one team that needs to get talked about more and more this offseason that's kind of been sneaky good and that can have a really good year this season are the Indianapolis Colts. They've made some really good moves, and for an organization that's kind of in a make it or break it season, they did what they needed to do, and I do think they're going to have a really solid season, borderline make the playoffs, depending on who the quarterback is and depending on if this quarterback can do good and can be very consistent. And let's just start with them. Number one, AR, he's on the hot seat going into year 3. Is a lot of question marks. In 2024, he had some ups, he had some downs. Pretty much some downs, him tapping out, him getting benched, him getting hurt, and Joe Flacco coming in like week 3, and the offense looked completely different, a lot more consistent, like a well-oiled machine. Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, Alex Pierce, they all look like good receivers. And with AR, it's very one-dimensional. It's very option-based. Hand the ball off, or AR, he'll just run it himself. I think at one point he was completing less than 50% of his passes, and it was like an all-time low. That is super bad, and I don't think the coach should have drafted a project quarterback at number 3. I don't care if his potential is Tom Brady with legs. Do not draft a project quarterback at 3rd overall. It just doesn't work. If you want a quarterback, you want a certified baller. But going into Daniel Jones' situation, let's say if AR gets benched for Daniel Jones, I think Daniel Jones is in a golden situation. He's in a lot better of a well-rounded offense than the New York Giants have ever put around him. It was either him and Saquon, or last year it was only him and Malik Neighbors and some other low-tier complementary pieces. Tyrone Tracy came on the scene, did his thing here and there. But the fact that you have a top 10 running back, you have a really good up-and-coming receiver in Josh Downs, the best tight end prospect in the whole NFL draft in Tyler Warren, a solid line with probably the best guard in the NFL in Quentin Nelson. You got a bunch of pieces on that offense, and this is a dream scenario for Daniel Jones if he wants to make his NFL career return. If he does really good, he could have a Sam Darnold kind of year, make the playoffs, get paid, whether it's by the Colts or another team that needs a quarterback. Who knows? And when we talk about that defense side of the ball, there are some aging stars and there are some players that may not be on this team after 2025. One of them being DeForest Buckner. He's been with the team since I believe 2020. He got traded in the first round, from the Niners to the Colts. You have Kenny Moore. He's getting up there in age. You got a couple other guys to where they're getting up there in age, and they're going into their last season of their contract, and they're like, yo, I'm looking to win games. I'm looking to get in the playoffs. Like, I'm tired of this rebuilding, all this and that. Bank order quarterback. Yo, let's win games now. And they just got a new defensive coordinator. He kind of runs a, complex scheme, have a little disguise coverages here and there, which is, I think it's okay if you have the pressure to confuse a quarterback, but you adding some defensive back presence like Cameron Bynum and Travarius Ward, and you drafted a DB in the 3rd round, Justin Wally from Minnesota. I think the Colts made the necessary moves for their defense to be a lot better. Now, the crazy part is that the Colts can still make some roster moves and upgrade the roster through free agency. If you think on free agency, there are some guys out there that need teams. I'm not saying AR, I'm not saying Keenan Allen, but there are some guys that would help this team out with depth, rotation pieces, and things like that. One of them being Matthew Judon from the Atlanta Falcons. He hasn't found a team yet. He can come in, be a rotational guy alongside Latu and, Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner, JT. I do think he'll be a complimentary piece. Preston Smith, the same thing. James Bradbury would be a depth piece, even though he's coming off an injury. It didn't really play in 2024. For my Eagles, the Colts do have some very injury-prone players on that secondary, and I'm not saying add him, but add a DB. Actually, add yourself a Kendall Fuller, a veteran piece that has played in some really big games that can be there with Travarius Ward and Cameron Bynum. Just somebody to make the roster a little bit more beefy, a lot better. But I do understand that they want to give guys like Juju Brents more time to develop and give him more reps, more live reps, rather than him practicing and being a rotational piece. I I do understand that, but I don't know everything about the Colts. These are just my personal thoughts what the Colts should do. If it was me, if I was Chris Ballard as a GM, but obviously I'm not a GM. I'm just a guy with a mic saying my thoughts. Tough. Now, what's the best case scenario for this team in 2025? I think one of them is that they find out real early that, AR ain't the answer anymore, and they fully bench him for Daniel Jones, or they go into training camp saying, yo, Daniel Jones, you're our quarterback for the season. AR will be your backup, and he does pretty good, wins 10, 11 games, gets into the playoffs. I don't think they'll win the division over the Texans or over the Jags, but I do think they'll be better than the Titans. But let's say that they win the division. Cool. They get a home field game and they win a playoff game with Daniel Jones. That's the best case scenario. I don't see them getting out of the divisional round, not unless something crazy happens. Or another good case scenario is that AR comes in guns blazing, looking like an actual quarterback, taking his check downs, sliding, and just looking like a really polished quarterback and showing improvement and winning a playoff game. I think that's the main thing: getting into the playoffs and winning a playoff game. One of the worst case scenarios is that both of them suck. Let's just call it what it is. Both of them suck, and they win 3 to 5 games. Guys go down with injuries, and they just blow it up. They fire Chris Ballard, they fire Shane Steichen, they just get rid of everybody, a clean house. Another thing is they leave AR in too much, right? Like they try to put in Daniel Jones like week 8 or 9, and they dug themselves in a hole, and now they can't get themselves out. And I do think that's a realistic chance of, we're in week 8 and we're 3-5 and we're 4 games behind the division winner. Now it's throwing Daniel Jones. Hey, Daniel Jones, get us out of this situation. And that would be very, very unfair for a guy like Daniel Jones, especially if he's not playing in the entire season. But overall, those are just my thoughts for the Colts and what they have this upcoming season. I do think there's a lot of upside and there is a lot of downside. And this is a make it or break it season for this organization. They want to see forward steps of progress. Can we win playoff games? And once again, they got guys who are on their last year of the guarantees. The Colts could cut everybody and just have a clean, full house, and it could be a rebuild next year. But let me know what you guys think down below. It's your boy 4th and Goal. We out, man. Peace.